Ancient.eu, Ancient.eu, Semiramis. Samu Ramat, more famously known as Semiramis, was the queen regent of the Assyrian Empire, reigned from 811 to 806 BCE, before the Common Era, who held the throne for her young son Adad Nirari III until he reached maturity. She is also known as Shamu Ramat or Samu Ramat. She was the wife of Shamash Adad V, who reigned from 823 to 811 BCE, and when he died, she assumed rule until Adad Nirari III came of age, at which time she passed the throne to him. According to historian Gwendolyn Lake, this woman achieved remarkable fame and power in her lifetime and beyond. According to contemporary records, she had considerable influence at the Assyrian court. This would explain how she was able to maintain the throne after her husband's death. Women were not admitted to positions of authority in the Assyrian Empire, and to have a woman ruler would have been unthinkable unless that particular woman had enough power to take and hold it. This, however, is precisely the problem with Samu Ramat's reign. There is very little information about what she did and how she went about doing it, and some scholars refer to her simply as an obscure Assyrian lady of the 8th century BC, of whom we know nothing for certain, except that she is named on an inscription as Lady of the Palace. It would seem, however, that she was much more than that, and however little may be left to record her reign, there is enough to suggest that she was the equal of her predecessors and secured the kingdom after the death of her husband. Other ancient accounts, such as those by Diodorus Siculus, also seem to have combined earlier accounts of Samuramat's reign with myths and legends relating to the goddess Astarte and Ishtar Inanna, so that in time the historical queen became mythical, semi-divine Semiramis. The theory is contested, however, and there are those historians who claim that Samuramat had nothing to do with the later figure of Semiramis, and even those who claim that Samuramat never ruled as regent. The historian Wolfram von Soden, to cite only one example, writes that Samuramat, the Semiramis of Greek literature, was temporarily regent after 810 BCE, cannot, however, be proven. Von Soden is not alone in this opinion, but other historians, such as Bauer, are just as adamant in their claim that Semiramis not only reigned after the Assyrian Empire, over the Assyrian Empire, but was the inspiration for the myths and legends surrounding Semiramis. Whether Samuramat was the model for Semiramis continues to be argued by modern historians, who often cite the same ancient inscriptions for their conflicting arguments, and it does not seem to be a debate that will be settled anytime soon, based simply on the evidence of Samuramat being able to erect her own stele at the prestigious city of Ashur. However, it would appear she was a very impressive and very powerful Assyrian queen, who was known to later generations as Semiramis. From earlyhistory.com, in ancient days, when legend and myth were placed at the border of reality, often signifying an intangible truth, there is one story that stands alone, hidden deep in the archives of historical obscurity. It is seldom present in the popular literature of the great epics of old, like the Odyssey, Hercules, Helen of Troy, and so forth. Nor has it ever received considerable recognition as one of the great classics locked into the confines of an in-depth study for future literary expeditions. Yet beneath its structure lies a mystery, or perhaps more of an aberrant narrative that intertwines with so many other epics of its time that one would become confused as to interpret who this person really is. And excuse me guys if I'm butchering this, it's 1 a.m. so maybe going a little cross-eyed here. The article is written to shed a light on the saga of the mysterious but fascinating Queen Semiramis, the ancient effigy of the Assyrian Empire. Famed for her beauty, strength, wisdom, voluptuousness, and alluring power, she is said to have built Babylon with its hanging gardens, erect many other cities, conquer Egypt and much of Asia including Ethiopia, execute war against the Medes and Chaldeans, and which eventually led to an unsuccessful attack on India, where she nearly lost her life. The only complete significant documentation that I found intact about Semiramis is recorded in the historical writings of Diodorus Siculus, Library of History, a Greek historian about the same time as Julius Caesar. Although he is listed in the category of an elite expert on ancient history, many scholars have come to the conclusion that much of his writings, especially those of the narratives of Semiramis, are plagiarized and based on historical legends colored with elaborations of thought and disguised fantasies, and therefore cannot be recognized as existential tangible truth or fact. There is definitely no mention of Semiramis in any Hebrew documents or biblical texts. It must stand to reason that the placement of Semiramis must surely come at a much later date, a time that would be more familiar to Diodorus, since his lack of Assyrian history is possibly too obscure for him to have full knowledge of all the facts. And it must be understood that nearly all ancient accounts of Assyria and the surrounding area do not refer to the earlier primitive cities in its culture, but to the later capital and residence of King Nebuchadnezzar. Even Herodotus, another Greek writer, from his own personal observation describes this account in the first book of his history. Semiramis, by many opinions, is believed to be totally fictitious and never really did exist. However, there does remain a three-side standing wall between the ancient Old and New Palace, where a detailed etching of a curious hunting piece in which Semiramis on horseback is throwing her javelin at a leopard, while her husband, Ninus, is piercing a lion. It is near this last palace that the famous hanging gardens were, and so commonly celebrated by both the Greeks and Italians. Now to address Hyslop's book, The Two Babylons. In my opinion, I believe it's still a valuable source of information on mythology and false deities of paganism, but I think it's important that we keep in mind that Hyslop apparently fudged details to make them point to Nimrod and Semiramis, and I found what he said about the god as being the god of forces mentioned in Daniel chapter 11 verse 37 through 39 to be true, But the problem is that his claim that Semiramis was the inspiration for the goddess was not true. He made this claim, I believe, because he saw the goddess like most of us do, and he needed an explanation for her existence. And so he looked at the myth of Isis and Osiris, and he jumped, well, he, and maybe in a little bit of desperation to have an answer, he hypothesized that Nimrod was Osiris and Semiramis was Isis. But as we have just read in some of these articles from the internet, if Semiramis really truly did exist, she existed many centuries after Nimrod had actually lived. So if she even really truly did exist, she was not the person that Hislop claimed she was, and she was definitely not the inspiration for the goddesses that came after. So from the freethinker.com, within the realm of research with regards to the Vatican's Roman Catholic Church, as well issues generally relating to what may be termed the New World Order and the Illuminati pertaining to secret societies, mystery schools, certain names are generally referred to as sources of information. One such name is Alexander Hislop, in particular regards to his book, The Two Babylons. The bottom line issue is not whether or not there is a connection between the ancient Babylonian mystery religions and the practices of the Roman Catholic Church, because there clearly are many elements of secret society, mystery religions within the Roman Catholic doctrine and practice. The issue is one of scholarly accuracy, and it is to this end that Ralph Woodrow wrote the article, The Two Babylons, which first appeared in Volume 22, Number 2, 2000 AD, issue of the Christian Research Journal. In Woodrow's words, as time went on, however, I began to hear rumblings that Hislop was not a reliable historian. I heard this from a history teacher and in letters. As a result, I realized I needed to go back through Hislop's work, my basic source, and prayerfully check it out. As I did this, it became clear Hislop's history was often an arbitrary piecing together of ancient myths. He claimed Nimrod was a big, ugly, deformed black man. His wife Semiramis was a beautiful white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, but she was a backslider known for her immoral lifestyle, the inventor of soprano singing, and the originator of priestly celibacy. He said that, and I cut some out, Noah, to get to the point, Noah's son Shem killed Nimrod, that Semiramis was killed when one of her sons cut off her head, and so on. I realized that no recognized history book substantiated these and many other claims. The subtitle for Hislop's book is The Paper Worship Proved to be the Worship of Nimrod and His Wife. Yet when I went to reference works such as the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Americana, the Jewish Encyclopedia, the Catholic Encyclopedia, the World Book Encyclopedia, carefully reading their articles on Nimrod and Semiramis, not one said anything about Nimrod and Semiramis being husband and wife. They did not even live in the same century, nor is there any basis for Semiramis being the mother of Tammuz. I realized these ideas were all Hislop's inventions.